The first thing my eyes landed on that morning wasn't the sunrise stretching over my pastures, it was the skeleton of a wall where no wall had any business being. A half-built structure of concrete blocks, fresh trails of mortar, and a bright red pickup truck parked dead center in my south pasture. I stopped on the porch, coffee halfway to my lips, stunned. This was my land. Acres upon acres of open ranch that I had spent my entire life defending, maintaining, and keeping whole. Yet somehow, right there in the open daylight, someone had decided to start building on it. I walked closer, boots grinding against the gravel. A woman wearing oversized designer sunglasses and a wide sun hat stood beside the truck with her arms crossed like a queen overseeing her kingdom, directing two men who were busy mixing cement. When she spotted me approaching, her lips stretched into something that resembled a polite smile, though it was a stiff, forced thing. "Morning," I said, steady and calm. "You want to tell me why you're putting up a wall on my property?" She didn't hesitate for even a beat. "This isn't your property," she replied. "It's part of the Green Valley HOA. I'm the president, and we're beginning construction for the new community entrance." I stared at her, blinking slowly. There was no HOA out here. This ranch had been in my family for 3 generations. She held her posture, that smug smile unmoving. "Well," she added briskly, "that's about to change. We're expanding." That's when it hit me she wasn't confused. She wasn't mistaken. She genuinely believed she could take a piece of my land, simply because she decided it now belonged to her precious HOA. Or maybe she didn't believe it at all. Maybe she just thought I wouldn't push back. The cement mixer whirred loudly behind her. One of the workers gave me a nervous look. "Ma'am," I said, lowering my voice, "I strongly suggest you stop right now." She tilted her head, oozing condescension. "If you have a problem, speak to our lawyers. But this wall will be built. It's already approved." Then she turned away and began barking out more orders to the workers. I stood there for several moments, jaw tight, heart pounding hard enough to shake my ribs. This wasn't confusion, this was a hostile takeover. And the way she acted, the way she moved, told me she had probably pulled a stunt like this before. By the time I made it back to the house, my coffee was stone cold, and so was my patience. I called my brother and my closest neighbor and told them everything. "You sure you don't want to call the sheriff first?" my brother asked. "Oh, I'm calling them," I said. "But I'm also heading down there myself, and I'm not going empty-handed." The sun was still climbing higher, but my mind was already racing ahead. If she thought my ranch was free for the taking, she was in for one hell of a surprise. Calling the sheriff didn't help much. The deputy on the phone was polite, but completely useless. "Sir, property disputes like this can take weeks to resolve," he said. "We'll send someone to make a report, but I can't guarantee they'll stop construction today." Weeks? By the way, and Karen, if that was even her name, could have built an entire compound. I hung up and called my brother Luke again. "Bring the truck and the case," I told him. The case was the old cedar chest we kept in the barn. We hadn't opened it in years. Inside were our rifles, slings, and enough gear to camp out for several days if things ever got serious. We weren't the type to go looking for trouble, but life had taught us trouble sometimes came looking for you, and when it did, you'd best be ready. Luke showed up about an hour later, dust swirling behind his truck. Neighbor Dale pulled in right after, his weathered cowboy hat pulled low over his brow. Neither man had to say a word. They both wore the same look, a hard, focused calm that only comes when you understand exactly what's at stake. "They still building?" Dale asked. "Yep," I replied. "And Karen's giving orders like she owns the place." We loaded into Luke's truck and headed toward the south pasture. The heat was already rising, cicadas screaming in the tall grass. As we turned the last bend, I saw the wall had grown a whole 3 feet. The workers were moving fast, sweat soaking through their shirts. While she hovered over them, Karen spotted us before we even parked. She stomped toward us, heels clicking sharply against the dirt. "I told you this is community property now," she snapped. "You can't threaten us." "Not here to threaten," I said as I stepped out of the truck. "We're just here to make sure nothing else gets built until the law sorts this out." Luke and Dale stepped out behind me. Each carried a rifle not raised, not aimed, just visible enough to make a point. The workers froze instantly. One dropped his trowel with a clatter. Karen's eyes flicked to the guns. "This is intimidation," she hissed. "I'll have you arrested." "No, ma'am," Dale said calmly. "This is called protecting what's ours. You're the one trespassing." For a moment, the only sound was the wind sweeping through the tall grass. The workers exchanged uneasy looks. I stepped forward. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You and your crew are going to pack up and leave this property today. The county can figure out the rest." Her face reddened, but she didn't budge. "We'll see about that," she muttered. I held my stare. Luke rested a hand casually on the truck door, ready for whatever came next. The standoff hung in the air, tight and brittle. Karen's jaw clenched. The workers looked back and forth, unsure. Finally, one of them cleared his throat. "Ma'am, maybe we should just come back tomorrow." She shot him a glare sharp enough to slice through steel, but I caught the faint tremor in her hands as she adjusted her hat. "Tomorrow will look the same," Luke said evenly. "Except next time, we'll have more folks with us." The air stretched thin again until finally, Karen spun on her heel. "Fine," she snapped. "Pack it up." But this isn't over. The workers didn't wait for her to change her mind. Tools clattered into the truck bed, cement bags were hauled away, and within minutes, the rumbling of the mixer faded into silence. Karen lingered, staring at us like she expected an apology or maybe a flinch. She got neither. She finally climbed into her truck and slammed the door so hard the sound echoed across the pasture. When they drove off, none of us moved until the dust settled. Only then did I release the breath. I didn't realize I'd been holding. "That was too easy," Dale said, stroking his chin. "She ain't the type to back down," Luke nodded. "She'll be back, and next time she might bring law enforcement with her." We walked the boundary line she had tried to claim. The foundation wasn't even 2 feet tall, but it pushed a full 15 feet into my land. This wasn't a mistake. She had surveyed this. She knew exactly what she was doing. Back at the house, I pulled out the old county maps and property records. Every line confirmed what I already knew: this ranch was ours. Free and clear. There was no HOA jurisdiction anywhere near my ranch, none. By late afternoon, the sheriff finally showed up. A young deputy named Mason. He was respectful enough, but he spoke with that same slow, bureaucratic calm I already heard on the phone. "She claims she has paperwork showing the land was annexed into the HOA," Mason said, flipping open his notepad. "Claims ain't fact," Dale muttered. I handed Mason my property deed. "This is recorded with the county. No one annexed anything." He scanned it, nodded slowly. "All right. I'll make a report. Just keep things civil. If she comes back." We all knew he meant when, not if. The way Karen had stormed off earlier told me she wasn't retreating, she was regrouping, planning her next move, and she wouldn't come back alone. 3 days later, she returned. It was a scorching Saturday morning, the kind where the heat shimmered across the horizon like a mirage. I was checking fences when I saw sunlight flashing off windshields. 3 vehicles rolled down the gravel road, slow, deliberate. In front was Karen's red pickup. Behind it, a white SUV, and behind that, a flatbed truck piled high with lumber. Seated behind the wheel of the SUV was a man in a suit, clearly not there for labor. Luke and Dale arrived minutes after I called, each stepping out with the same steady, ready silence as before. Karen was the first to climb out. She looked freshly pressed, polished, and irritatingly proud of herself. "This," she announced, gesturing to the man in the suit, "is Mr. Caldwell, our HOA attorney. We are here under full authority to resume work." Caldwell tugged at his tie and cleared his throat. "Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed the annexation documents. This land is now part of the Green Valley HOA. If you obstruct construction again, you could face legal consequences." I studied him closely. "Annexation requires a public vote, county approval, and landowner consent," I replied. "You have none of those. What you do have," I held up my deed, "is a forged claim." His jaw ticked. Karen crossed her arms, eyes sharp and hungry. "Regardless," Caldwell pressed, "we have contractors who will proceed. If you resist, if they cross that fence," Dale interrupted, voice low, steady, unshakable, they're trespassing." The flatbed driver paused, looking from us to Karen, clearly torn. The air turned heavy enough to taste. Luke opened the cedar chest in the bed of his truck. Inside, the rifles caught the sunlight, not pointed, not lifted, but undeniably present. "Gentlemen," Luke said evenly, "we're here to settle this peacefully. But understand, we're prepared to defend what's ours." Karen's smug expression faltered. The contractors shifted uneasily. Caldwell's face tightened into a deep frown. "This is intimidation," he muttered. "No," I said. "This is called standing on our own soil." For a few long seconds, no one breathed. The wind blew through the dust and mesquite. My heartbeat thudded, slow and deliberate. Finally, Caldwell leaned toward Karen. "We should reconsider our approach. If law enforcement shows up now, it won't go in our favor." Karen's eyes blazed with anger, but she nodded stiffly. "Fine," she snapped. "But you haven't seen the last of me." They piled back into their vehicles. Engines grumbled to life. One by one, they rolled away, slower this time, but leaving behind a thick, silent promise. I knew it wasn't over. They were only gathering strength for the real fight. The week that followed Caldwell's visit was eerily quiet. No trucks, no workers, no sign of Karen. But on a ranch, quiet means one of two things: peace, or the storm gathering where you can't see it. I kept to my routine, but every time I rode down near the south pasture, it felt like walking past a ticking time bomb. Luke and Dale stayed on call day and night. Even Deputy Mason stopped by once, asking if anything new had happened. Then, early Friday morning, it happened. I heard the low growl of diesel engines. From the porch, I counted 5 vehicles rolling down the road in a tight, determined convoy. At the front was Karen's truck. Behind her, 2 flatbeds stacked with lumber, fencing, and a prefab gate. Next came a trailer carrying a skid steer loader, and at the rear a county sheriff's SUV. Luke pulled up just as they reached the pasture road. "She's bringing the law with her now," he said, grabbing his rifle. Dale arrived seconds later, carrying that same quiet resolve like a badge. Karen stepped out first, dressed sharp, hair perfect, smiling like victory was already in her pocket. "Gentlemen," she called, "construction begins today. I have the sheriff here to ensure there's no interference." The sheriff was an older man I didn't recognize, heavyset and smiling, and clearly annoyed at being dragged into this. "They've got a claim," he said bluntly. "I'm here to keep things civil." I stepped forward with my deed in hand. "This land has never been annexed. Their claim is fraudulent. You have no authority to enforce it." Karen laughed, light and dismissive. "You can wave that paper around all you want. We have momentum. The community needs this." The workers began unloading. The loader's engine sputtered to life. Dale's voice cracked through the noise like a whip. "If that machine crosses the fence line, you're trespassing." Karen tilted her head smugly. "Sheriff, will you stop them from harassing my crew?" But the sheriff didn't answer. His eyes drifted from my deed to the rifles in Luke's truck. Luke stepped forward, voice steady. "We're not here to hurt anyone, but this is our land, and we will defend it." The workers hesitated. The loader's driver looked at the sheriff, waiting for direction. The air thickened into something almost physical. Every breath felt like a choice. Karen crossed her arms. "We're building now." I stepped closer to the fence, matching her stare. "Then you'd better be ready for what comes next." The loader revved. Boots crunched in the dirt. The balance tipped. The machine lurched forward, bucket aimed straight for that half-built foundation Karen had left behind. It crossed the fence line slow, grinding, inevitable. Luke and Dale stepped up beside me, rifles in hand, not raised, not threatening, but held by men who knew exactly how to use them. "Stop the machine," I yelled over the roar. Karen smirked. "You won't do anything. You're all talk." The loader crept onward. All eyes burned into me, the workers, the sheriff, even Caldwell watching from the SUV. I stepped forward, voice steady, controlled. "This is your last warning. You are trespassing on private property. Stop the machine or you will be removed." The loader slowed. The driver looked to the sheriff, sweat dripping down his temples. The sheriff's hand twitched toward his radio, but he stayed silent. Luke angled his rifle slightly, letting the sunlight hit the metal. Dale mirrored him. The message was unmistakable. Shut it down. The driver shouted suddenly, slamming the loader into neutral. The engine sputtered and died. Karen spun toward him. "What are you doing, lady?" the driver said, wiping his brow. "Not getting in the middle of this. This ain't worth my life." The rest of the crew backed away toward their trucks. Flatbeds rumbled as engines fired up. Karen's voice hit a sharp, panicked edge. "You can't just walk away. We own this land now." "We know," I cut in firm. "You tried to take it, and you lost." The sheriff finally stepped forward, tone low and absolute. "Ma'am, I think it's time you leave. If you have a claim, take it to court. But there won't be any building today." For a second, I thought she might explode. Her fists clenched. Her face burned red. Her mouth opened, then closed. Nothing came out. Without another word, she stormed to her truck and slammed the door. Engines roared, dust flew, and the convoy rolled away across the pasture. We stood there long after they were gone. Silence settled heavily over the land. Luke finally cracked a grin. "You think she'll come back?" "Not without a judge's order," I said. "And she's not getting one of those." The foundation stayed untouched. Weeks later, the county officially rejected her annexation claim. It was over. The land was ours just like it always had been. And if Karen or anyone else ever forgot that, we'd be ready to remind them. If you loved watching Karen's land grab fall apart in spectacular fashion, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next showdown. Smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my boots, and share this with a friend who loves seeing justice served.